The massive orbital station hung above Viridian Prime like a metal moon. Captain Dahayan sat in his command chair aboard the EU's Horizon's Edge, watching the structure grow larger on the view screen. He had seen the Galactic Council station before, but it never stopped being impressive. Thousands of ships from dozens of different species came and went from its docking bays every day. "Captain, we're receiving docking clearance," said Lieutenant Sujin from the communications station. Her voice was calm, but Dahayan could hear the slight nervousness underneath. This was supposed to be a routine diplomatic mission, but something felt wrong. Dahayan nodded. "Take us in, nice and slow." In the ship's diplomatic suite, Ambassador Jiwoo was reviewing her notes one final time. She had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 5 years now. In that time, she had learned to read the subtle political currents that flowed through the ancient organization. Other species treated humanity like children who had stumbled into an adult conversation. Polite smiles, condescending nods, and very little real respect. But that was changing. Humanity had proven itself capable, resourceful, and determined. Their colonies were thriving. Their technology was advancing rapidly. Their trade agreements were fair and profitable. Ku believed that this meeting would be another step forward in establishing humanity as a true partner in galactic affairs. She was wrong. Youngmi, the military intelligence officer assigned to the delegation, entered the suite. "Ambassador, we've docked. The council is ready to receive you. Any changes to the agenda?" Ju asked, gathering her data tablets. Yumi hesitated. "No official changes. But I've been monitoring the station's communication traffic. There's more security than usual. Several species who aren't normally present have sent representatives." Gu frowned. "Like who?" Thalvorians brought their entire high command. The Chitauri Hive sent 3 mind voices instead of the usual one. Even some of the smaller species who rarely attend are here. "Maybe they're discussing something important that has nothing to do with us," Giwu said, but she didn't believe it. Her instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. The council chambers were even more crowded than Youngmi had suggested. Representatives from nearly every member species filled the tiered seating that surrounded the central platform. At the highest level sat the council's ruling members. The Thelvorian overlord Kesmarak dominated the center position, his scaled bulk shifting as he watched the human delegation enter. Jiwoo walked to the speaker's platform with her head held high. She bowed respectfully to the council, following the traditional protocols. "Honored members of the Galactic Council, I bring greetings from humanity and Earth. We are grateful for this opportunity to discuss our continued cooperation and mutual benefit." Overlord Kesmarak didn't return the greeting. Instead, he leaned forward, his multiple eyes focusing on Jiwoo with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Ambassador Jiwoo of humanity. The Council has completed its evaluation of your species' activities over the past 30 years. Jiwoo felt her stomach tighten. This wasn't how these meetings usually started. "We are pleased to hear that, Overlord. We hope the evaluation shows our commitment to peaceful cooperation." "It shows expansion," Kesmark said flatly. "Aggressive expansion. Your species has established 47 colonies in 3 decades. You've increased your military fleet by 300%. Your resource extraction operations span 7 systems. All within the territories granted to us by Council Charter," Gyu replied carefully. "We have not violated any agreements or encroached on claimed space." "The rate of expansion is concerning," said one of the Chitauri mind voices, its translated words echoing through the chamber. "Young species that grow to quickly become unstable. History has shown this pattern repeatedly." Gu glanced at Youngmi, who stood beside her. "Died." The intelligence officer's face was carefully neutral, but her eyes were sharp and alert. Something bad was coming. "The Council has made a decision," Kesmark announced. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "For the stability of the galactic community and the protection of all member species, humanity must accept the following terms immediately." A holographic display appeared above the platform showing the Council's demands in multiple languages. Gi Wu's blood ran cold as she read them. Humanity was to surrender 70% of its military fleet within 90 days. All vessels were to be decommissioned or transferred to Council control. Population growth on human colonies was to be restricted to levels approved by council oversight committees. Earth and all human worlds were to accept permanent council observers with authority to monitor and restrict any activities deemed potentially destabilizing. "This is absurd," Giwu said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "These demands would cripple our civilization. We would lose our sovereignty, our ability to defend ourselves, our freedom to grow and develop. You will retain limited autonomy in local matters," Kesmark said dismissively. "The Council has implemented similar arrangements with other species. They have found the transition to be beneficial." Beneficial. Gi Wu's anger was rising now. "You're asking us to become vassals, to surrender our independence. We are offering you the opportunity to remain part of the galactic community," the Overlord corrected. "The alternative is to be declared a rogue species and face appropriate consequences." Youngmi stepped forward and whispered urgently in Ji Wu's ear. "Ambassador, I'm detecting military transmissions. There's a council armada positioned at the edge of human space. They're already there." Gi Wu felt the full weight of the situation crash down on her. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a predetermined subjugation. The council had already decided. The armada was already in position. Accept or be destroyed. "How long do we have to respond?" Ji Wu asked quietly. "One standard galactic week," Kesmark said. "We expect your answer then." The council is adjourned. The massive doors of the chamber opened, clearly dismissing the human delegation. Gu stood there for a moment, looking up at the assembled representatives of dozens of species. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked satisfied. Most looked indifferent, as if this was just another routine matter of galactic administration. Back aboard the Horizon's Edge, Daehin watched his crew prepare for departure. The ambassador's face when she returned to the ship had told him everything he needed to know. Youngmi immediately headed to her station and began encrypted communications with Earth. Jiwoo sat in the observation lounge, looking out at the massive council station. 30 years of careful diplomacy, of building relationships, of proving humanity's worth. All of it meaningless. The council had never seen humans as equals. They had been waiting for the right moment to bring humanity to heel, just as they had done to countless other species. "They're making a mistake," Youngmi said, joining the ambassador at the window. "They think we're like the others. Think we'll either submit or be easily crushed." "Maybe we will be," Giwu said quietly. "That armada you detected? How big is it?" "Preliminary scans suggest over 3,000 capital ships, support vessels bringing the total to almost 10,000. The number was staggering. Humanity's entire fleet numbered less than 500 ships. "Send everything to Earth," Jiwu ordered. "Every detail of the ultimatum, every scan of their fleet positions, every communication you can intercept. Let the people back home decide how to respond." As the Horizon's Edge pulled away from the station, Daehan set course for Earth. He had a feeling this would be the last peaceful trip home for a very long time. The Galactic Council had pushed too far. Now they would find out what happened when you cornered a species that refused to surrender. The journey home would take 3 days. In that time, Youngmi worked tirelessly, gathering every piece of intelligence she could pull from Council communications. What she found was both terrifying and telling. The Council had done this before, many times. 12 species over the past 2,000 years had received similar ultimatums. 8 had complied. 4 had refused and been destroyed. The Council was confident this would end the same way. The emergency session of United Earth Command took place in a bunker deep beneath Geneva. Admiral Hansel stood at the head of the table, his weathered face grim as he watched the holographic replay of the Council's ultimatum. Around him sat the military commanders, political leaders, and strategic advisors who would decide humanity's fate. "Play it again," said Director Biarm from the Cultural Analysis Division. She had watched the recording 5 times already, studying every word, every gesture from the council members. The hologram flickered back to the beginning. Overlord Kesmark's voice filled the room once more, listing the demands that would effectively end human independence. When it finished, the room fell silent. "Opinions?" Admiral Hansel asked. "They're serious," said General Taman, head of strategic defense. "Youngmi's intelligence confirms a massive fleet already positioned near our borders. This isn't a bluff. Can we fight them? Asked Chancellor Heinwu, Earth's civilian leader. Not in a straight battle, Taman admitted.
Out.
Their fleet outnumbers ours 20-1. Superior firepower, superior shields, centuries of combat experience. So we surrender? Another voice asked from down the table. Never, Admiral Hansel said firmly. The word hung in the air like a declaration. But we need to understand what we're facing. Borum, you've been researching the Council's history. Tell us what you found. Biorum stood and activated her own holographic display. 12 species appeared, their names and homeworlds listed beneath their images. These are the civilizations that received ultimatums similar to ours over the past 2,000 years. 8 complied with the Council's demands. She highlighted 8 of the species. The Vexenar, the Quilthani, the Morose, and 5 others. All of them accepted Council oversight. All of them still exist technically. But look at their development curves. New graphs appeared, showing technological advancement, population growth, and territorial expansion over time. For each species, the lines went flat immediately after accepting Council control. They stopped growing, Barm continued. No new colonies. Minimal technological development. Their populations are stable, but stagnant. The Council keeps them alive, but prevents them from ever becoming powerful enough to challenge the existing order. What about the other 4? Hansel asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Borum's expression darkened. The Krenthal, the humans of Progs. Wait, there were other humans? Different evolution, different world, Biorum explained. No relation to us. They refused the Council's demands 200 years ago, and their civilization was dismantled over a period of 10 years. The Council used overwhelming force to destroy their military, then occupied their worlds. The surviving Proxima humans exist as scattered populations across the galaxy, never allowed to reunite. The Council made an example of them. The room absorbed this information in heavy silence. The pattern was clear. Submit and stagnate, or resist and be destroyed. The Council had perfected this system over millennia. But Borum said, and there was something sharp in her voice now, none of those species were us. She changed the display to show Earth's history. Wars, disasters, near extinctions, and recovery. Over and over again, humanity had faced impossible odds and survived. The Council has studied our public records, but they don't understand what they're seeing. They see our conflicts, our violence, our tendency to fight each other, and they think it makes us weak or unstable. They're wrong. It makes us experienced. She pulled up military statistics. Humans have been fighting organized warfare for over 5,000 years. We've developed tactics and strategies across every possible terrain and situation. We innovate constantly because we've had to. Every human conflict has pushed our technology forward, forced us to think differently, adapt faster. The Council species haven't fought a real war in generations, Tommen added. They've crushed rebellions and destroyed weaker opponents. But they haven't faced an enemy that could actually challenge them. They've forgotten how to really fight. Admiral Hansel leaned back in his chair. What exactly are you suggesting? General Taman smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. I'm suggesting that while the Council was watching us, we were watching them. In preparing, he activated a new set of holograms. Secret shipyards appeared, hidden in asteroid belts and remote systems. Production facilities buried deep inside moons. Research stations disguised as commercial operations. For the past 15 years, since we first identified the Council's pattern of subjugation, we've been building, Taman explained. Not publicly. Not in ways that would trigger their concern, but steadily, systematically, preparing for this exact scenario. The scope of it was staggering. Hundreds of military vessels under construction in hidden facilities, weapons research programs that had been disguised as civilian projects, entire divisions of soldiers trained in secret. How did we keep this hidden? Chancellor Hyonwoo asked, clearly shocked that such a massive operation had been conducted without his knowledge. Need to know basis? Taman said. We couldn't risk Council intelligence detecting any unusual political activity. So we kept the circle small. Very small. And now? Admiral Hansal asked. Now we have options, Taman replied. We can't match their fleet size, but we don't need to. We just need to make conquest too expensive for them to stomach. Make them bleed for every system, every world. Make them regret ever threatening us. Bioram added her own analysis. Psychologically, the Council isn't prepared for extended conflict. Their member species are comfortable, complacent. They're used to quick victories against inferior opponents. A long, costly war would strain their political unity. You're talking about resisting, Chancellor, Hyanwu said slowly. Actually fighting back against the entire Galactic Council. I'm talking about survival, Admiral Hansal corrected. If we submit humanity as we know it ends, we become pets, controlled and limited. Our children and grandchildren will live under someone else's rules forever. Is that acceptable? The question hung in the air. Around the table, the faces of Earth's leaders showed a mixture of fear and determination. This wasn't a decision to make lightly. Billions of lives hung in the balance. What would resistance look like? Hyanwu asked. Specifically, Taman pulled up tactical displays. The Council expects us to either surrender immediately or gather our fleet for a defensive stand around Earth. We'll do neither. Instead, we mobilize everything. Every ship, every weapon, every advantage we have. We hit them where they don't expect it, using tactics they won't anticipate. They have thousands of ships, someone objected. Spread across their entire territory, Taman countered. The fleet near our borders is large, but it's not their entire military. And they're arrogant. They think we're already beaten. That gives us an advantage. Admiral Hansal stood. We need to vote. Accept the Council's terms or prepare for war. No middle ground exists. The vote was quick. Every hand rose in favor of resistance. Whatever the cost, humanity would not surrender its freedom. Then we move immediately, Hansal ordered. Taman, activate all hidden assets. I want every ship ready within 5 days. Communications, start encrypting all military channels. Intelligence, I need to know exactly where every Council ship is positioned. What about the colonies? Someone asked. Do we evacuate? We fortify, Hansal decided. Every colony becomes a fortress. If the Council wants our worlds, they'll have to fight for them. And we'll make sure that fight costs them dearly. As the meeting ended and commanders rushed to their duties, Bioram approached Admiral Hansal privately. Sir, there's one more thing the historical analysis revealed. Every species that resisted the Council tried to fight them conventionally. Ship versus ship, following established rules of warfare. They all lost because the Council had bigger fleets and better technology. Are you suggesting we do something different? Bioram nodded. The Council fights like an empire. Structured, hierarchical, following protocols that have worked for thousands of years. We need to fight like humans. Unpredictable, adaptable, willing to break every rule they think exists. Admiral Hansal smiled grimly. I think we can manage that. Across human space, the quiet mobilization began. Hidden shipyards roared to life. Weapons that had been stored in secret were distributed to fleet vessels. Soldiers who had trained in darkness prepared for the light of battle. The Council had given humanity 1 week to respond. They would have their answer. But it wouldn't be the one they expected. The stealth ship Whisper in the dark moved through Council space like a ghost. Its hull was coated with materials that absorbed sensor scans, making it nearly invisible to conventional detection. Captain Sung Ho stood on the small bridge, watching the displays that showed Council fleet positions throughout the region. How close can we get? He asked his navigator. To the main staging area. Maybe 2 light hours before we risk detection, Lieutenant Nari replied from the electronic warfare station. She was one of the best in her field, capable of slicing into enemy communications systems with frightening efficiency. Get us there, Sung Ho ordered. We need detailed scans of their fleet composition. This was one of 6 intelligence missions launched simultaneously into Council space. While Ambassador Jiwoo remained at the Council station, appearing to deliberate over humanity's response, These small ships gathered the information that could make the difference between victory and annihilation. Nari's fingers danced across her console as they approached the Council Armada. I'm picking up their command frequencies. They're not even encrypting most of their communications. They don't expect anyone to be listening. What are they saying? Sung Ho asked. Nari listened for a moment, her expression shifting from concentration to something like disgust. They're bored. One of the Thelvorian commanders is complaining about having to wait so long for humanity's inevitable surrender. Another is discussing shore leave schedules for after the brief enforcement action. Sunjo shook his head. The arrogance was almost unbelievable. The Council had assembled a massive fleet, positioned it to attack human space, and they were so confident of success that they were already making plans for afterwards. Get everything, he ordered. Ship classifications, weapon loadouts, commander profiles, communication protocols. If they're transmitting it, I want it recorded. Over the next 12 hours, the Whisper in the Dark collected an enormous amount of intelligence. The Council fleet was even larger than initial estimates suggested. 3,200 capital ships, supported by almost 7,000 smaller vessels. It was an overwhelming force by any measure. But Nari found something interesting in the tactical deployment. Captain, look at this. Their fleet is divided into 7 major battle groups, each from a different Council species. They're not integrated. Each group operates independently under its own command structure. Coordination problems? Sung Ho suggested. Definitely. I'm seeing communication delays, jurisdictional disputes, even arguments about tactical precedence. The Thelvorians think they should lead because they contributed the most ships. The Chitauri claim superior strategic experience. 3 smaller species are barely communicating with the others at all. Sunjo smiled. This was exactly the kind of information that could be exploited. A fleet that size should be unstoppable, but only if it worked together. If humanity could create chaos, turn those coordination problems into full breakdowns. The odds might not be quite as impossible as they seemed. Package all of this and transmit to Earth on quantum channels, he ordered. Then get us out of here before someone gets lucky with a random scan. Back on Earth, the intelligence from Sung Ho and the other reconnaissance missions was analyzed immediately. General Taemin presented the findings to Admiral Hansol in the secure command center beneath Geneva. The Council fleet is powerful but poorly coordinated, Taemin explained. More importantly, they're positioned for a quick, overwhelming strike. They expect to jump into our space, destroy our fleet in a single engagement, and force immediate surrender. They're not prepared for extended combat, Hansel observed. No, sir. Their supply lines are minimal. Their logistics assume a brief operation. If we can avoid that decisive battle and turn this into a prolonged conflict, their unity will start to crack. Meanwhile, in research facilities across human space, Dr. Menesio was overseeing the final production run of humanity's secret weapon. The quantum disruption torpedoes had been in development for 8 years. Based on theoretical principles that Council scientists had dismissed as impossible, how many are ready? Asked the military liaison officer assigned to the project. 2,000 warheads, Menesio replied, each capable of destabilizing the exotic matter cores that power Council ships. The chain reaction should catastrophically overload their power systems. Should. We've only tested them on small-scale models, Menesio admitted. But the physics is sound. When these hit a Council capital ship, it will tear itself apart from the inside. The torpedoes were distributed across the human fleet in absolute secrecy. Council intelligence was still active in human space, and any hint of a new weapon system would alert them to change their tactics, Commander. Commander Jaewook drilled the expanded fleet relentlessly in the outer systems. New crews, fresh from accelerated training programs, learned to work together aboard ships that had been hidden for years. Veteran officers shared hard-earned knowledge of space combat. Again. Jaewook barked as the squadron completed a training exercise. Your formation was sloppy. The Council will exploit any gap. Tighter, faster, no mistakes. The pilots looked exhausted, but they complied. They all understood what was at stake. In a few days, maybe hours, they would face an enemy that outnumbered them massively. Training was the difference between life and death. Civilian ships were being retrofitted across human space. Freighters received weapons mounts. Passenger vessels got military-grade shields. Mining ships were equipped with offensive systems disguised as industrial equipment. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't efficient, but it added hundreds of vessels to humanity's defensive capability. "They'll see through this," one engineer objected as he worked on converting a colony transport into a makeshift warship. "The moment they scan these ships, they'll know what we've done." "They won't scan them carefully," his supervisor replied. "They'll see civilian vessels going about normal business and assume we're paralyzed with fear. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late." Ambassador Ji Woo played her role perfectly at the council station. She requested meetings, proposed modifications to the ultimatum, asked for clarifications on minor points. Each delay bought humanity more time to prepare. The council members grew increasingly impatient with her, but protocol required them to engage in the negotiation process. "How much longer can you stall them?" Young Mi asked during a private communication. "Maybe another day," Ji Woo replied. "They're getting suspicious. Overlord Kesmarek actually asked me today if humanity was trying to buy time." "What did you say?" "That we're a careful species that doesn't make hasty decisions about our future." He seemed to accept that, but I could see doubt in his eyes. "The fleet will be ready soon," Young Mi assured her. "Just a little longer." On the sixth day, Admiral Han Sol called his final strategic meeting. Every ship was in position. Every weapon was loaded. Every crew was as ready as they could be. The massive holographic display in the command center showed human space in detail, with Council fleet positions marked in red. "They outnumber us badly," Han Sol said to the assembled commanders. "They have better technology in most areas. They have more experience with large-scale warfare. By every conventional measure, we should lose." He paused, looking at each face on the screen. These men and women would lead humanity's forces in the coming battle. Many of them would not survive. They all knew it. "But we have advantages they don't understand," Han Sol continued. "We're fighting for our homes, our families, our freedom. They're fighting to maintain an empire. We're willing to sacrifice everything. They expect easy victory. We know how to adapt and improvise. They follow ancient protocols. Most importantly, they think they know what we'll do. They expect us to gather our fleet for a defensive stand, to fight by their rules, to lose with dignity. We're going to do none of those things." Activated the tactical plan. It was complex, multi-layered, and unlike anything in standard military doctrine. "We're not going to wait for them to attack us," Hansel explained. "We're going to hit them first, in ways they won't expect, using weapons they don't know we have. We're going to turn their size against them, make their numbers a liability instead of an advantage. And if we lose," someone asked, "then we'll lose fighting," Hansel replied. "But I don't think we will. The Council has never faced an opponent like humanity. They're about to learn that there's a difference between subjugating weak civilizations and fighting. A species that refuses to kneel." On the seventh day, Ji Woo delivered humanity's formal response to the Galactic Council. She stood before the assembled representatives, her voice clear and unwavering. "The people of Earth have considered your ultimatum carefully," she said. "We understand the terms you've offered. We recognize the consequences you've threatened." The council chamber was silent, waiting for the inevitable acceptance. "Our answer is no," Ji Woo continued. "Humanity will not surrender its sovereignty. We will not submit to your control. We will not abandon our right to determine our own future." Overlord Kesmark's face showed genuine surprise. "You refuse? Do you understand what you're choosing?" "We understand perfectly," Ji Woo replied. "You've given us a choice between slavery and war. We choose war." The chamber erupted in chaos. Some council members looked shocked. Others seemed almost excited at the prospect of crushing another upstart species. Kesmarek's expression hardened into cold fury. "So be it," the Overlord declared. "The Council Armada will advance immediately. Your civilization will be taught the price of defiance." Ji Woo bowed formally, a gesture of respect that also served to hide her smile. "We'll be waiting." As she left the chamber for the last time, young Mi fell in beside her. "The fleet is moving," the intelligence officer reported. "They're coming," Good Jiwoo replied. "Let's go home and show them what happens when you threaten humanity." High Commander Velshara stood on the bridge of the Thelvorian flagship Dominion of Stars, watching the tactical display as the Council Armada prepared to enter human space. Around her, dozens of officers monitored systems and coordinated the massive fleet's movements. "All battle groups report ready," her second officer announced. Velshara nodded with satisfaction. 3,200 capital ships, arranged in 7 perfectly organized formations. The humans had maybe 500 vessels total, most of them smaller and less advanced than Council standard. This would be over quickly. "Open a channel to all battle group commanders," she ordered. "Remind them of the rules of engagement. We are here to enforce Council authority, not to commit genocide. Destroy military targets only. Once their fleet is eliminated, we'll accept their surrender." The channel opened, and Velshara delivered her instructions. Most of the other commanders acknowledged professionally. A few, she noticed, seemed almost disappointed at the limitations. They wanted a real fight, not a brief, punitive action against an inferior force. "Initiate jump to Sol System," Velshara commanded. The massive fleet entered hyperspace in a carefully coordinated sequence. When they emerged 30 minutes later, they were less than 1 light hour from Earth itself. "Deploy scans." "Locate the human fleet," Velshara ordered. What the scans showed made her frown. The Sol System appeared almost undefended. A few dozen older model warships patrolled the outer planets. Civilian traffic moved normally between Earth and its colonies. There was no sign of the mobilization she had expected. "Where are they?" she muttered. "Perhaps they've already surrendered," her second officer suggested. "No." Ambassador Jiwoo's defiance was clear. "They're planning something." Velshara studied the display more carefully. The human ships that were visible were older models, ones that Council intelligence had documented years ago. But where was the rest of their fleet? Reports had confirmed humans possessed nearly 500 warships. Only 50 were showing on scans. "Advance slowly," she ordered. "Full sensor sweeps. Watch for ambush." The Council Armada moved deeper into the Sol System, weapons armed, but still in standard formation. They passed the outer planets without incident. Mars appeared on long-range sensors, its orbital facilities operating normally. "Commander, we're detecting civilian vessels on intercept courses," Tactical reported. "Freighters, transports, mining ships, are evacuating," Velshara concluded. "Continue advance." That's when everything changed. Aboard the UES Indomitable, Admiral Hanzal watched the Council fleet enter his carefully prepared trap. They were exactly where he wanted them, moving exactly as he'd predicted. Arrogant and cautious in equal measure, expecting either surrender or token resistance. All units he transmitted on encrypted channels. "Execute Spring Thunder." The asteroids weren't asteroids. 50 objects that the Council had scanned and dismissed as unremarkable rocks suddenly activated, revealing themselves as weapons platforms bristling with missiles and energy weapons. They fired simultaneously, launching over 2,000 quantum disruption torpedoes at the Council fleet. The civilian freighters weren't evacuating. Their cargo holds opened, revealing concealed missile batteries and drone launchers. Hundreds of attack drones swarmed toward the Council ships. The older model warships, suddenly powered up with systems that shouldn't exist on such outdated vessels. Their hulls split open to deploy weapons arrays that had been hidden inside and from behind Earth's moon. From Saturn's rings, from a dozen camouflage positions throughout the system, the real human fleet appeared. Sleek new warships, built in secret over 15 years, roared into battle. Captain Daehyun led the first attack wave, his squadron of 40 ships diving straight into the heart of the Thelvorian battle group. "Target the quantum torpedoes on their capital ships. Maximum spread pattern." The torpedoes hit with devastating effect. Dr. Menesio's weapon worked exactly as designed. Exotic matter cores began to destabilize, creating cascading failures throughout Council ships. The first Thelvorian battleship tore itself apart as its own power systems went critical. Then another. Then a dozen more. Impossible. Velshara screamed as her tactical display showed red warning symbols spreading across her fleet. Those weapons shouldn't exist? Her ship shuddered as a quantum torpedo struck its shields. Alarms blared across the bridge. Core destabilization in progress, an engineer reported. We need to shut down main power now. If we shut down power, we're defenseless, Velshara shouted back. If we don't, the ship will explode in 3 minutes. Velshara made the only choice she could. Emergency shutdown. All power to minimum. The Dominion of Stars went dark, drifting helplessly as its crew scrambled to stabilize the core. Around her, dozens of other Thelvorian ships were doing the same, or simply exploding as their crews failed to react in time. Pilot. Sujin commanded a fighter wing that exploited the chaos perfectly. Her 20 small ships danced through the council formations, their size and speed making them nearly impossible to target. They weren't trying to destroy the massive capital ships. Instead, they targeted sensors, communication arrays, and weapon systems with precision strikes. Blue Squadron hit the Chitauri command ship's antenna array, Sujin ordered. Red Squadron, disable those point defense batteries on the left flank. The Council fleet was powerful, but it was designed to fight other large ships in organized formations. They had no effective defense against small, fast attack craft operating in swarm tactics. Fighters that should have been mere annoyances became serious threats as they systematically blinded and crippled larger vessels. Young Mi coordinated the tactical data network from a command, ship deep in the human formation. Every sensor reading from every human vessel fed into her systems. Advanced algorithms analyzed the data and distributed targeting information to all friendly units in real time. Chitauri Battle Group is trying to regroup on the left, she reported. Assigning priority targets to Delta Squadron. The Velvorian command structure is fragmenting. Recommend exploitation on multiple vectors. Admiral Hansel smiled as he watched the battle unfold. The Council's superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't coordinate. Their better technology was useless when their ships couldn't fight. Their experience failed them because they'd never faced an enemy that fought like this. Commander Jae-wook, take your battle group around their flank, Hansel ordered. Hit them from an angle they're not covering. Yes, sir. Executing maneuver. The human ships moved with practiced precision, the result of those exhausting training sessions. They didn't fight in neat formations like the Council expected. They swarmed, scattered, regrouped, and struck from unexpected directions. Every engagement was chaos from the Council's perspective, but perfectly coordinated from humanity's. The converted civilian vessels proved their worth. A mining ship, its industrial cutting lasers modified for combat, sliced through a Council destroyer's hull. A passenger transport, now carrying Marines and boarding pods, attached itself to a disabled enemy cruiser and sent soldiers pouring into the ship. "They're boarding us!" A Chitauri commander screamed over the communication channels. How are they boarding us in the middle of a battle? Because humans didn't follow the rules. Because humanity had learned centuries ago that in war there are no rules except survival. Because every dirty trick, every unconventional tactic, every innovation born from desperation was being thrown at the Council fleet. Hi. Commander Velshara finally got her ship's power restored after 40 agonizing minutes. When her tactical display came back online, she couldn't believe what she saw. The Council fleet had lost over 800 ships. 800. In less than an hour of combat, the human fleet had taken losses too. Perhaps 100 ships destroyed, but they kept fighting with an intensity that shocked her. Ships that should have withdrawn when damaged instead threw themselves at Council vessels. Crews that should have surrendered when facing overwhelming odds instead found ways to hurt their enemies even as they died. All battle groups reform and consolidate, Velshara ordered. We need to regroup and coordinate our response. But the 7 battle groups, each operating under different command structures and following different tactical doctrines, couldn't agree on how to regroup. The Thelvorians wanted to pull back and reorganize. The Chitauri insisted on pushing forward to maintain momentum. 3 smaller species were already arguing about whether to continue the battle at all, the fragmentation that Nari had. identified in her reconnaissance mission, was now tearing the Council fleet apart under the stress of actual combat. Captain Dehayan pressed his advantage mercilessly. Every minute the Council spent arguing was a minute humanity could use to inflict more damage. His squadron targeted command ships specifically, killing the officers trying to restore order. The battle raged for 3 days. Not a single massive engagement like the Council had planned, but dozens of running fights across the Sol system. Human ships would strike, disappear, and strike again from a different angle. The Council fleet, designed for overwhelming frontal assaults, struggled to adapt. On the third day, High Commander Velshara made the hardest decision of her career. Signal all battle groups. We're withdrawing, Commander. We still outnumber them, her second officer protested. And we're losing, Velshara replied bitterly. We've lost over 1,300 ships, and we haven't even reached Earth. If we continue, they'll destroy us piece by piece. The Council Armada began its retreat, leaving debris and damaged vessels behind. The human fleet pursued them to the edge of the system, harrying them every step of the way before finally letting them go. Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Hanzal watched the enemy flee. His crew was exhausted, his ships were battered, and they'd paid a terrible price in lives lost. But they had one. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from across human space, his communications officer reported. The colonies want to know if the battle is over. Hanzal nodded slowly. Tell them the first battle is over. Tell them we won. And tell them to prepare, because the Council won't let this stand. They'll be back. But we beat them, sir. We beat their arrogance, Hanzal corrected. Now comes the hard part. Now they'll take us seriously. The Galactic Council chambers were in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other, their voices creating a cacophony of rage, fear, and confusion. High Commander Velshara stood before them, her scaled skin darker than usual with stress. Delivering her report on the disaster at Sol, 1,300 ships destroyed, Overlord Kazmarek repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Against a species we believed primitive and weak. They were neither, Velshara replied. They had weapons we didn't know existed. Tactics we'd never encountered. A coordination level that exceeded our own, despite their smaller numbers. It's unacceptable, roared a Chitauri mind voice. We must mobilize the full Council military, gather every available ship, and crush this human rebellion completely. Several species voiced agreement. Others looked uncertain. The Macrani Union's representative, Councillor Venther, stood slowly from his seat. And if we do, he asked quietly, if we commit our entire military to destroying humanity, what then? How many more ships will we lose? How many of our people will die? And what happens to the Council's authority across the rest of the galaxy when other species see how much it costs to maintain your empire? You speak dangerously close to treason, Kazmarek warned. I speak of reality, Venther replied. The humans revealed something in that battle. They showed that the Council can be resisted, successfully. Word is already spreading. How long before other species begin to question whether they need to accept your ultimatums? The chamber fell into uneasy silence. Venther had spoken aloud what many were thinking, but none dared say. The Council's power had always been based on the certainty of overwhelming force. Humanity had shattered that certainty. Meanwhile, aboard the battle-scarred Horizon's Edge approaching Earth, Ambassador Jiwoo received an unexpected communication. The encryption was sophisticated, routed through multiple relays to hide its origin. When she opened it, she found herself looking at Councillor Venthor. Ambassador Jiwoo, he began. I am contacting you without the Council's knowledge. Several species, those of us who have grown tired of Thelvorian and Chitauri dominance, wish to discuss the future. Gyu's eyes widened. You want to negotiate? We want change, Venther corrected. Your species has proven that the Council's traditional methods can be challenged. We believe this presents an opportunity, not for more war, but for something better. What? What are you proposing? A meeting. Secret for now. Representatives from 12 species who are ready to support reforms. We need to coordinate before the council makes its next move. Guhu considered carefully. This could be a trap. But it could also be the opening humanity needed. I'll discuss this with my superiors and respond within 6 hours. On Earth, Admiral Hansel met with Chancellor Hyenwu and the military leadership to discuss the unexpected offer. General Taemin was skeptical. It could be a trick to get our defenses down while we're celebrating our victory, he warned. But if it's genuine, it's exactly what we need, Bjorn countered. We can't fight the entire council forever. Eventually, they'll overwhelm us through sheer numbers. But if we can split the council, create political divisions, we might achieve through diplomacy what we can't through warfare. What do you recommend? Huiyon Wu asked Hansel. We proceed cautiously, the admiral replied. Accept the meeting, but prepare for treachery. If it's real, we pursue it. If it's a trap, we spring it on them instead. Jiwu responded to Venther's message, agreeing to a meeting on the neutral world of Kelthera. A delegation would include her, Youngmi for intelligence analysis, and Admiral Hansal himself. When they arrived at Kelthera 3 days later, they found representatives from 12 species waiting. The Mekrani Union, the Quilthani, the Vexenar, and 9 others. Some were species that had accepted council subjugation in the past. Others were smaller civilizations who had always feared receiving an ultimatum. Thank you for coming, Venthor said, gesturing to seats around a large circular table. We understand you have little reason to trust us. None at all. Admiral Hansal agreed bluntly. Some of you were part of the fleet that attacked us, yes, admitted a Quilthani representative. We were, and we watched humanity fight in ways we never imagined possible. It made us ask questions we should have asked long ago. The meeting lasted for hours. The other species shared their frustrations with the Council's dominance. The Thelvorians and Chitauri controlled the major decisions. Smaller species had no real voice. The vassal states existed in permanent stagnation. The entire system was designed to maintain power for the few at the expense of the many. But you've shown that resistance is possible, Venther said. Not easy. You paid a terrible price in that battle, but possible. That changes everything. Bjorn presented humanity's proposal. It was the document she'd been working on since the battle ended, a comprehensive restructuring of galactic governance. We call it the Accord of Free Species, she explained. The core principle is simple. No species can be subjugated. Every civilization has the right to develop freely, defend itself, and determine its own future. Conflicts would be resolved through arbitration, not ultimatums backed by force. The Council would never accept this, someone objected. The Council as it exists now? No, Hansal agreed. But what if the Council itself changed? What if enough species demanded reform? The discussion continued. Plans were made. Alliances were forged. By the time the meeting ended, a coalition had formed. 12 species representing perhaps 30% of the Council's total membership is committed to supporting the Accord of Free Species. It won't be enough to pass immediately, Venther warned. But it's a start. And if we can convince others to join us, especially some of the vassal states who might see this as a chance for freedom, we might have enough votes. Back at the Council station, Overlord Kesmarek was discovering the extent of the problem. His spies had reported the secret meeting on Kelthera. Worse, they'd detected communications between various species discussing the human proposal. This is intolerable, he raged. The humans have turned a military defeat into a political victory, not yet advised one of his senior officials. But they're trying. We need to act decisively. Crush the humans completely before this movement gains more support. Kesmark prepared a resolution calling for total war against humanity. He was confident he could gather enough votes. But when the Council convened to discuss the measure, he was shocked to find significant opposition. Venther stood and addressed the chamber. We have a choice before us. We can commit to a war that might cost thousands more ships and tens of thousands of lives. A war that, even if we win, will leave the Council weakened and fractured. Or we can consider that perhaps the humans have a point. They defied Council authority. Kesmarok shouted. They defended their freedom, Venther countered. something many of us in this chamber claim to value even as we deny it to others. The debate raged for days. More species began openly supporting reform. The vassal states, seeing a chance to escape their permanent subjugation, added their voices. The council was splitting, just as humanity had hoped. Finally, facing the collapse of his support, Kesmarak made a desperate move. He attempted to order the Thelvorian fleet to attack Earth without council approval. But High Commander Valshera, still recovering from the trauma of the first battle, refused. "I will not send my people to die in a war we cannot win," she declared publicly. "The humans have earned the right to negotiate." It was the final blow to Kesmarak's authority. Within hours, he was removed from the council leadership. A coalition government, including representatives from the reformist species, took control. The new council leadership invited humanity to participate in creating a new galactic charter. Ambassador Jiwoo, now speaking not for a subjugated species, but as an equal partner, helped draft the final document. The Accord of Free Species was ratified 6 months after the Battle of Seoul. It fundamentally changed galactic governance. Subjugation was explicitly forbidden. Each species maintained sovereignty over its own territory. Conflicts would be resolved through mediation and arbitration. A new galactic assembly would replace the old council. With rotating leadership and no permanent dominant powers, not everyone was happy. The Thelvorians lost much of their influence. The Chitauri saw their empire reduced to only their core worlds. Some species predicted the new system would collapse into chaos, but the former vassal states began to grow again. New technologies emerged as species that had been held back for centuries finally had freedom to develop. Trade flourished under fair agreements rather than imposed terms. Captain Dahan stood on the observation deck of a newly constructed space station above Earth. Watching ships arrive for the first official Galactic Assembly session, vessels from dozens of species, many of which had been enemies mere months ago, now gathered in peace, Nari joined him at the window. She'd been promoted to commander and assigned to the new Assembly's security force. Hard to believe, isn't it? 6 months ago, we were fighting for survival. Now, we're hosting the galaxy's new government. They underestimated us, Dahan said quietly. Everyone does, Nari replied with a slight smile. Once below them, Earth turned peacefully in space. The planet had faced extinction and survived. Humanity had stood against an empire and won, not through superior force, but through courage, innovation, and the refusal to surrender in the assembly chambers. Ambassador Jiwoo prepared for the opening session. She looked around at the representatives from across the galaxy. Some still viewed humanity with suspicion, others with respect, a few with gratitude for the changes humanity had forced. The Galactic Council went too far, she said in her opening remarks. They pushed humanity into a corner and expected us to submit. Instead,